I'm going to be comparing the Lethal Weapon franchise to the Body Snatchers franchise. The reason for that is in part one of this series, I compared the Body Snatchers movies to the Witch Mountain movies, Body Snatchers 1. I compared Lethal Weapon to Saw, Lethal Weapon 1. So now I'm going to compare Lethal Weapon and Body Snatchers. When you look at highest score for each franchise, the 1956 movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is black and white, has a 97%. Lethal Weapon 2 has an 82%. When you look at lowest score, Lethal Weapon 4 only has a 52%. But in the case of Body Snatchers, this movie called The Invasion that came out back in 2007 only has a 20%. When you look at average score, this one's pretty close, but Body Snatchers has an average of 66, while Lethal Weapon has an average of 68. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, you got a gap of 77% in the case of Body Snatchers. Then in the case of Lethal Weapon, you got a gap of 30. So Lethal Weapon has won 3 of the rounds so far, while Body Snatchers has won 1 of them. So Lethal Weapon will be winning this debate already, but let's look at my personal opinion, and this one's not hard for me at all. I'm easily going to choose Body Snatchers. One of the big reasons why is because I haven't seen any of the Lethal Weapon movies, whereas I have seen all the different versions of Body Snatchers, and I think it's interesting that they aren't all doing exactly 100% the same thing. All these different movies are dealing with this idea that aliens come, they take over, thus people don't know who to trust anymore. There's the paranoia that comes of knowing that these aliens are impersonating people. Thus, that leads to a situation where you don't know who to turn to or who you can trust. And so you have people that are on the run that learn about what's going on or trying to stop it. But you look at the details, these different versions aren't exactly the same, because in the case of the movie Assimilate, for example, this one's looking at a small town where you have these two boys that are posting all these videos on the internet so that people in the community know them as the YouTubers. And then the aliens come, start to impersonate people. These two boys learn what's going on. They're trying to escape from the town. They end up doing that. The movie ends in a way that indicates, okay, there are some other survivors out there, so the fight hasn't been lost 100%, but certainly this movie doesn't end on just a purely heartwarming note. In the case of the movie The Faculty that came out back in the 90s, this one's set at a school where you have the aliens come, they start to take over. There's a group of students that become aware something's up, something's not the way it should be. They learn about the aliens. And actually, this movie ends in a heartwarming way because it ends in a way that indicates, oh, the humans actually won. They actually defeated the aliens. And thus, you're like, okay, the world is saved. Whereas the 1956 black and white movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers ends in an ambiguous way where you don't know what's going to happen in the future, because it ends with the guy who knows what's going on at this facility, and then he's trying to warn these other people, you need to lock it down, close down the highways, do all these things to try to prevent this invasion from expanding across the globe. And then right at the end, we see these other people are starting to take what he says seriously. They are starting to take some action, but you don't know, is the invasion going to be stopped or not? And in the case of the movie The Invasion that came out back in 2007, this one starts off in just a bit of a different way, where the alien invasion starts because like a comet or meteor crashes on to the earth. Actually, I think what happens is there's something that's brought back from space by astronauts, and then the aliens start to take over, start to impersonate people. In the case of this movie Body Snatchers, which also came out back in the 90s, in this case, a family where the dad is this military guy are going to a military facility, and then the invasion starts happening. So by the end, this family's trying to get away from this base so they can survive. More and more people around them are being taken over by the aliens. I like this setup. It works really well for a paranoia thriller. I think that these different versions of the story are really good, to be honest. When it comes to Lethal Weapon, I know that these are definitely famous action buddy cop movies. I mean, when you think, what is the classic action buddy cop movie? Well, of course, Lethal Weapon is the classic one of this genre. Plus, at least the first one's directed by Richard Donner, who's done several classics. I mean, Lethal Weapon, The Goonies, Superman, The Omen. You see that he has range there, because the Goonies and The Omen are very different from each other. Two different tones, two different audiences, two different genres. I've definitely seen some action buddy cop movies. I mean, I got to see Bad Boys 4 in theaters this year, but I haven't seen a ton of that specific kind of action movie. Of course, I've seen straightforward action movies before, John Wick, Equalizer, Extraction, but those aren't exactly the same as action buddy cop like Lethal Weapon. That'll wrap things up for this video.